All right, we will turn it over shortly to Marty Waldman. And Marty, I see you on the screen there.
Okay, I only see the last chart, so.
Yes, we'll have to get your set of charts up. And please do let me know when you're ready. And I have an introduction for you.
Okay, you do the introduction or I do?
You're certainly welcome to. I do have an introduction that was supplied to me, but it's your call.
Yeah, well, I don't have it with me and I don't remember, so if you want to do it. So.
All right, I've got the words right up in front of me. So, and after this, I will be turning it over to Beth Mund, who will be handling your Q&A and giving you like the 10 minutes to go kind of warnings, Marty. So have a good talk here. But Marty Waldman brings over 42 years of DoD, Navy, and Air Force program management experience to SIL from his technical involvement with cruise missile, space shuttle, Titan IV, Minuteman, Peacekeeper, and Eastern Western Range data acquisition and processing systems. Having successfully authored and prosecuted numerous patents, Mr. Waldman's insight and understanding of what's necessary to bring a product to the commercial and military market is continually demonstrated via the fielding of these and other key technologies at SIL. Please welcome Marty Waldman.
Okay, thanks. And SIL is Space Information Labs. We're located up in Santa Maria, California, just a little bit north of Vandenberg Air Force Base. I'll get into that just maybe at the end. I'll talk a little bit about what we do. So, okay, so it looks like the first part of the presentation here is actually, do you have a different set of charts? Because this kind of comes after the main presentation chart about nuclear things we're doing in Las Vegas. Yeah, that's good. Good. So you've all heard of Yucca Mountain. Probably not too much lately. And there's a group of us here, probably about 15 very technically minded, mostly nuclear engineers, program managers, people with a lot of experience working nuclear. And our big mission has been to get a program going in Las Vegas that takes advantage of Yucca Mountain. And that's what we'll be talking about here. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so just a little bit about Yucca Mountain. That's a picture of it in the top. It's one of many ranges here in Nevada. And it was built, its construction ended about 12 million years ago. Volcanic eruptions formed it. And it's about 90 miles northwest of Las Vegas. So actually pretty close to California. I should have looked this up since the last time, but it's probably about 20 miles from California, but it's 90 miles from Las Vegas, and Las Vegas is the city that has all the issues with it. Okay, next slide, please. So the whole thing is you have all this nuclear waste from all the nuclear power plants around the country. And it's been, once that fuel has been used, and it only gets used about 3% actually, it gets stored out in the, usually the parking lot areas around the nuclear power plant, these very secure cement casks. And because that spent fuel is actually very radioactive compared to the fuel that before it's been used a bit. They wanted to have Yucca Mountain be a storage site for all the spent fuel from around the country. Somewhere's around 100 different sites, I believe the number is now. And as you've heard, there's been a lot of politics involved in this. Actually, Nevada originally agreed to constructing Yucca Mountain probably in the early 1980s, and then the whole thing kind of fell apart. They put in a main tunnel, but they never dug all the other mini tunnels that would be required to store this fuel, because Nevada had a change of plan. The change of plan was they didn't want to take the spent nuclear fuel anymore, and it's been in the courts for about the past, whatever, coming up on 40 years or so. And then just recently, the president acknowledged that Nevada isn't going to budge on this. And he says, I hear you, Nevada, and we'll work with you to find a creative alternate solution. So that's what this presentation is about. It's that creative alternate solution that perhaps uses Yucca Mountain, perhaps it doesn't, but solves the spent fuel storage dilemma that's been going on for 40 years. It's kind of like if you never took out the trash in your kitchen, what would your house look like and smell like after 40 years? So that's what's happened to the country with all the spent nuclear waste piling up at the reactor sites. So we came along here and we're saying, well, if Nevada would have become a waste dump, would be missing out on the most lucrative leading 21st century opportunity in the world. And that's what this presentation is about. This is the creative solution. Okay, next one, please. All right, so that's what it looks like. This is one of the sites. I have no idea which one. It's just a picture off the internet. So basically around the country, the waste is simply and safely, in quotes, stored behind chain link fences. And a number of places, I haven't seen them personally, but they're sitting within plain sight of the general public. So I just find that this is a little side thing. I find it amusing that it's safe enough to leave out in a parking lot like this, but it's not safe enough to bury deep down into a mountain. One thing about this, if there was a small nuclear weapon deployed into this area, its effects could be magnified greatly by breaking open all these casks with all that extremely dangerous spent fuel. But anyway, that hasn't happened yet and likely won't. But anyway, if it had been buried, we're going to get back onto the topic here. If it had been buried, it would have been a waste, a storage of waste, but it also would have been a waste. So we're glad that it wasn't. This time, in my opinion, bad politics ended up in a good thing. So you never really know how things are going to end up. Okay, next one, please. Because when they were saying no to Yucca Mountain, they didn't have any idea about this plan that we're working. So what we're saying here, a big solution for the country's spent nuclear waste is we use Yucca Mountain on the left, that picture you saw, for temporary storage. So we would bring in bit by bit in a logistical train that could be handled, the spent fuel to then be placed in a queue to then, and this is the key thing here, to go to a spent fuel recycling center that's built in the vicinity. So I'll give you a little background on spent fuel recycling. So this was something that was started, I believe, in the late, well, probably earlier, but in the 70s, let's say. And then President Carter kind of shut it down for the United States because he was concerned that if we recycled all the spent fuel at the time, there'd be all kinds of good fuel that would be ready to go and could be proliferated around the world, stolen, this, that, whatever, who knows, but that it could be used for making new bombs. So he just kind of stopped the whole thing. So that's what resulted in all the spent fuel piling up in all these parking lots of all these reactor sites. So what we're saying now is to the federal government, let me back up a little bit. So back then when Carter said no, we had done a lot of work on this. And other countries, specifically the French, really like this idea of spent fuel recycling. So they worked with us, and we kind of transferred that technology to them rather than letting it go to waste. And France took this, and today they are, I might not have this right, but I believe they're about 70 or 80% nuclear powered country, and they extensively recycle their spent fuel to keep on providing power for their country. So what's happened now, the technology didn't stop in the 70s because we quit. It got far advanced. And now we have an opportunity to, and we do have connections with France and other countries to understand how this has evolved in these other locations, and we can bring it home to the old United States and start doing it here. So a plant like what you see in this photo roughly costs about $25 billion, which is a lot of money. However, there's presently sits about $40 billion in this nuclear slush fund that's not being applied to anything. So what we're saying and what we're proposing to federal government is that build us one of these recycling centers here in Nevada. We will do the spent fuel recycling. We'll set up the logistical train. We'll use Yucca Mountain for temporary storage, and we can start clearing the backlog of spent nuclear fuel all around the country. And then they'll even have $15 billion left over. But we'd like that too. But anyway, we're talking about $25 billion to build this. So it's a bargain for money that's not doing anything now. And also it begins the ending of the pileup of spent fuel, as you saw in that photo. And the technology has come so far that basically I mentioned that 97% of the good fuel remains. They only use about 3%. So, and then that 3% is very toxic. And there's even been a system developed called pyroprocessing that takes that 3% and it stores it safely. It encapsulates it in the ceramic kind of storage. So in that photo, most likely in France, you can see those little red things on the floor. These are all around that storage area where the very bad stuff is being spent. So then you might say, okay, well, we're going to have all this great spent nuclear fuel. What are we going to do with it? So the second new concept I want to bring up here is about the new evolving technology of unbelievable small modular nuclear reactors. So what we're showing here with the next plus sign is you take the spent fuel, you use it in these small reactors, and then you build out microgrids for each area. So just think like, I'll give an example here in Las Vegas because it's easy to picture. You could have the whole strip powered by one small modular reactor, or you could have each hotel powered by its own small modular reactor. And thus guaranteeing about 25 years of uninterrupted electricity. And I'll be getting more into this reactor stuff. On the next page is a little better view of that graphic in the lower right corner. So if we can go to that one, please.
Is it showing up?
Good. Thanks. This is what's that?
Is it showing up?
I thought somebody said something. Anyway, I can't understand what you're saying.
No, I mean the slide. Does it show
anyway,
up?
Yeah, the slide shows up. I got it. Yeah. So this is a blow up of that last slide. You can see there's like a person standing there next to a reactor, like in the middle. And there's also one on the left. You can see these things are small. These are different concepts. Actually, none of them really exist yet. However, in 2023, the first one will be existing. There's, I an RFP that was put out recently, and there's a few companies working together to produce the first one. And so like I mentioned about on the strip, you could have a small modular reactor powering a hotel or the whole strip or whatever, and they're modular, so you can plug them together too. That's the concept, plug and play. You can see on the right side those like turquoise rings surrounding an area. So this gets to the biggest thing. You've all heard that question, what happens if the grid goes down? Okay, so we're all like stuck at home now because of all this virus stuff. So just imagine if we were stuck at home and the power had gone out. Or just imagine if there was no virus and the power went out for a week, a month, a year, 5 years, whatever. Be a whole lot worse than what we're going through now. What we're going through now really isn't anything. Well, it is, but compared to the power going out, it's nothing. Because the power out, like nobody's going to be going to work, nobody is going to be going shopping because the refrigeration isn't working in the stores. It's like our cell phones, the generators at the towers are going to run out of diesel fuel after a day or two, and we're going to be out of communication. So the saying I like to say is that our need for reliable electricity far exceeds the ability for it to be produced reliably. Very important concept. We just assume all the stuff is going to work. It's kind of actually wired in by a thread. The only way to solve the huge grid situation is to have no more huge grid. That it all evolves towards microgrids in a defined area, whatever that area would be, and those microgrids each powered by their own appropriately sized small modular reactor. And you can see here, like on the left side, there's one on a truck or two on a truck, two different trucks. So very portable, portability's in mind. And so that's the gist of this slide. So turns out the military is taking the leadership with this because as much as we need it, the military needs it. And as most big things in our world evolve, they get proven up by the military first. Military is generally the first customer. So I believe the next slide we'll talk about our work with the military to start this process. So if we have the next slide, please. Okay, so Nevada, well, it's actually the slide after this, but I'll talk to this one for a second. Nevada has a long nuclear heritage. People used to come here in the 60s to watch the bombs explode. If you all been in the northern part of Las Vegas, off of Fremont Street, there's even a bar there called Atomic Liquors that has been there since way back. And I've been there, and people showed me how people go on the roof, and they have all kinds of memorabilia inside. So if you're ever in Las Vegas, check that place out. It's very interesting from a nuclear heritage perspective. It's just down Fremont Street. It's called Atomic Liquors. And then, ironically, nuclear became a very bad word for Nevada. So that's what we're looking to change around now. Okay, next one. I'm gonna close this window. My neighbors are having too much fun. Okay. So we're fortunate to have Creech Air Force Base here, about 40 miles northwest of Las Vegas. And as you know, Creech Air Force Base is the home, pretty much. There's a number of other operating locations that fly drones around the world, but Creech is one of the most significant ones. And they depend on the existing electrical system in order to do their operations. So what's happened with that is, I got to explain a concept called remote split operations. And this isn't like the Civil War or Revolutionary War days or even World War II, where you pretty much had to be there to deliver your effect, whatever that is, shooting or aiming a cannon at someone. It's like now people sit on the other side of the world and they produce effects on the other side of the world that, let's see, is anyone, okay. Just want to make sure Ken wasn't texting me here. Because the weapon system is split, the people are controlling it here, Las Vegas area, and running operations in Afghanistan or wherever they are. So if the power goes out in Las Vegas, those drones that are flying, doing the missions that they do, the very important missions, they're basically blind. Now the drones will land automatically. They'll know, they lose link, they know how to get back to where they took off from. But basically the way these drone missions work, pilots are following a target for a week, a month, a year, whatever it is, trying to understand how they're eventually going to attack that target. So ask yourself what happens if just when you're coming down on that day, when you're going to execute your mission, the power goes out in Las Vegas. All that work and focus is now lost. So Creech Air Force Base, the drone world operations, not that all the other military worlds aren't important, but Creech stood up and said, hey, we want to get a backup or a primary power system going with small modular nuclear reactors. So we've been working with them. This is a group picture that we took. We have many meetings up there and still working with them. So this is how this new field will be pioneered. It's through the military, through the drones, which is here in Las Vegas. So that's why I'm kind of talking to you from Las Vegas about this whole concept. But it fits in nicely with Yucca Mountain and spent fuel recycling that I'll get into shortly. Okay, next. Okay, so what this does, talking about recycling, and this all hooks into Yucca Mountain, is from a business perspective, that recycling center would be a key thing. You know, with the shutdown of everything, Las Vegas wouldn't be depending on the strip economy. There'd be a lot of either construction or white collar or PhD kind of jobs that would go with that recycling center. And then moving in and evolving in modular reactor production here also. And we would simply take that fuel locally and load it into the reactors and then ship them to where they're going, all ready to go to begin their mission wherever it is. So backing up a little bit to the military, the Army heard about what we were doing, and they've been trying to get small modular reactors going for a long time. They want to be able to go into an area and fly in a small reactor, roll out a microgrid, and power whatever operation they're doing locally. And this could be done like in a C-17 airplane that can take off and land on a short runway, or I believe dirt. I'm not positive about that, but some in the audience might know. But anyway, so depending on the size, depending on the runway available, and how much power you need, either from smallest to largest number of modular reactors could be plugged together and operate. So this is a great Army need. So they're working along with us because we're looking around in the 5 megawatt capacity, the ability to produce power, and that's around what they're looking for too. A lot of people have been killed, Army people have been killed in fuel convoys. And then even if they're successful at getting that fuel to where the generators are, I have friends that were stationed over Afghanistan. They said that air is like so thick with diesel fumes, like you really can't stand it after much time. So diesel generators are not the way to go for an efficient running military. Picture the logistical nightmare that would be ended with them having a small modular reactor of their own. Very important to them. So they're working with us on that. So in parallel, it's like the military would like to see this happen. And because we started this effort in Nevada, this is the creative solution for getting Yucca Mountain online, but in a different capacity. Use it for temporary storage, recycle the spent fuel, put it in small modular reactors, and wherever those go, military, civilian, whatever, it's going to roll out with the military, though. It'll get proven over maybe a 5 to 10 year time span before the civilian sector will feel comfortable with the reliability of these things, because when everyone thinks of nuclear, they're still afraid of it. So the military isn't afraid of it to work this. They're kind of afraid if they have to use diesel generators for forever. That's something to really be afraid of. So anyway, so this is just, this is a presentation we've given to many politicians, so we have to point out why it's important to do this. So is there one more slide in this deck, I think? I think the solar, yeah, solar comparison. So turns out all the like green folks, they are hugely getting on board with nuclear. This is something you don't hear too much, but is true. So here's one of those towers, I believe in the first presentation, to launch a rocket from. You can see all those mirrors. You can see the focusing tower. They run those turbines from all that reflected sunlight into the tower. That takes up a whole lot of land. Like, you know, I drive by these regularly when I drive back to California. You've probably driven by them too. They're about right near the border into Nevada. One small modular reactor could replace that whole field in that tower, to give you an idea of the energy density. And then there was this big push in Nevada to build a huge solar area. And the environmental people, they opposed that. They said, no more of this solar stuff. We need to go nuclear with the small modular reactors. So that's what this is about here. And we have a lot of support from the green representation. So, okay, I think that's the end of that slide. So maybe if we go back to that one that we had in the beginning, yeah. Okay, so our group, myself personally, I've briefed like it. We're now in California. We don't have like whatever 100 congressional districts or whatever you have. We have four. 1, 2, 3, 4. Not much. So it's easy to cover all the politicians, and we've done that. And then we have the governor. Like all states have a governor. You have one. We have one. We gave a briefing on March 3rd to our present governor. His meeting was in Las Vegas, the Homeland Security meeting. So that's like a picture of the 4 of us that went to this. And then Carson City, as you can see in the TV, where the meeting was headed out of, even though the governor was here, that they participated in this and heard the presentation. So next slide, please. Okay, so you can see governors seated at the head of the table. And so the 3 slides I presented follow from this. And so that's my back there, giving the presentation. Okay, next one, please. Okay, so I briefed him on this good old, the military aspect, and you've all kind of been through this a few minutes ago, so you understand this pretty efficiently. The importance of working with Creech to get them a backup nuclear small modular reactor capability. And the Department of Energy, working with the Strategic Capabilities Office out of the Pentagon, they put out that request for proposals. So right now it's being worked on, and we are working really hard. We just had a meeting yesterday? No, excuse me. That was on Wednesday. and April 15th, where our whole team teamed up again and discussed our path forward for that. So we're working that real hard to get that into the system. The Nevada test site, now called the Nevada Nuclear Security Site, is very close to Creech. We could have that reactor come to the NNSS, tested there, and there's already existing power lines that go down to Creech. So we could use that nuclear reactors as a backup system, so they wouldn't even have to use their diesel generators. So we could test out the ability for Creech to receive for the first step of this. This is a long journey of 1 billion steps, but the first step would be to provide Creech Air Force Base with backup power from that small modular reactor. So when we talk about Homeland Security, that's an important first step with all this. Okay, next one, please. And by the way, that you'll see it on the next slide. Secure the Grid Coalition. They're in DC. We're working very closely with them, and they understand the best way to secure the grid is to not have a grid. But that's a journey. That's probably about 50-year journey by the time the national grid is phased over into these microgrids, each powered by its own small modular reactor. So this is the ultimate solution for assured power in the United States. By the way, there's estimates. I have no idea. On the lowest end, we have enough spent fuel that can be recycled to power all the small modular reactors we would ever have for about 200 years. On the high end, I've heard like 1,000 years of fuel. But probably within 200 years, we will have like in Back to the Future, Mr. Fusion. So anyway, this is the next step of evolution for decentralizing us from power availability via the grid. Because this gets back to the original premise of what's going on now. We're stuck in our houses, but wow, isn't it great we have electricity? Picture if we didn't. Be a whole different ballgame. So keep that in mind with all this. It's whenever you use electricity, be grateful that it's there, because there are so many vulnerabilities in its supply that very quickly it might not be. So this is the big picture solution to that. And the big phrase here.
Thank you, Marty. This is Beth Mund. I'm just jumping in to give you a 10-minute heads up. Please continue your slides, and we'll see if we have some time for Q&A in a few minutes.
Okay, yeah, I'm just about done. So that's like the most important takeaway, is to realize how the existing grid is very vulnerable, and it far exceeds the demand and the dependence that we have on it with all our devices and our refrigeration. There's no more person delivering ice. We don't have ice boxes anymore. It's like everything. We depend on electricity so much. So keep that in mind. That's like the biggest takeaway here. So this is aimed at solving that. Okay, so next one, please. Not to scare you or anything, but this is reality. And so this is our third slide to the governor, talking about how the existing spent fuel can be recycled to 97%. Each time you lose about 3%. So here I put the high end estimate, but in a previous slide it says 200 years, but it's anywhere between 200 and 1,000, don't know. 200 is very adequate. You figure the country has only been here in the 250 plus or minus range. Okay, so Southern Nevada, and this is a big thing to convince the politicians. Like, they hate nuclear. They've been fighting Yucca Mountain for 40 years. It's nuclear derangement syndrome in Nevada. So we are chipping away at this bit by bit by bit. And this is the most difficult part. Every audience we brief, like include this presentation, I've given this presentation probably about 30 or 40 times. Every audience loves it. They come away, they say, this is a terrific thing. You give it to our representatives, like, they won't give you a straight answer after the briefing. They say, well, yeah, that was good. Okay, yeah. So There's a lot of politics here, huge amount of politics. They're in this 40 years of saying no to nuclear. So that's the challenge here, but they're going to miss out on an opportunity if they don't take it. The state of Virginia is very interested in this whole same scenario. And actually, we're working with them because there's enough of this to go around. It doesn't have to all be in Nevada. There could be recycling on the East Coast and West Coast. So, but the main thing for America is that we need to have our independent, assured power. Okay, the last little thing, we've been presenting at the Nevada Nuclear Waste Commission. That's a group that reports to the governor. Actually, we got to the governor before we aimed to give our 27 March presentation, which got canceled due to all the virus stuff. So this would have been our second major briefing to them. They have conceptually, they like what we're presenting here as that creative solution. So we'll see where that goes. Who knows? By the time we give a briefing again, there might be a whole new set of politicians in power and it might be easier. Don't know. But anyway, we're always doing everything we can. Our big focus now is with Department of Energy and the Strategic Capabilities Office to get the reactor. We want to have that tested here. And they kind of assumed that we didn't because of all the backlash from the 40 years of no, 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 no. So we're making a presence now like, hey, there's a group in Nevada that's working this. Come work with us on this. This needs to happen for Creech, the military, and roll out to the civilian sector eventually. This is the first step of a many-year journey. Okay, I think that's the last one. So I guess, I'm pretty sure it is. So I'm ready for questions. Let's see, there's 4 in the, how do you want to handle it? Should I just like click on
I'll start us off with a question from someone who's anonymously attending. Besides presenting to the state government, has a form of this briefing been presented to the Department of Energy and Administration?
Yeah, so we also, we had a meeting with, she's either about the 3rd or 4th in leadership at the Department of Energy. She loves this, she loves recycling. She has regular briefings with the president, so we're pretty confident that this has been heard all the way up to the top. But again, kind of like what we're seeing now with the virus thing, the states are the ones that have the power, and the governor has the power to say yes or no. So the federal government's finished with trying to make Nevada say yes to anything. Nevada needs to say yes on its own. So to answer the question, yes, this has gone right to the top from the federal level, but it has to get approval from the state level because we've had 40 years of federal saying, take this stuff, and the state saying, no, we're not, no, we're not. So.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, the next question is from John. What changes in infrastructure are required to move from national grid to microgrids?
Yeah, it's just kind of, I shouldn't say abandoned in place, but okay, let's, for an example, my neighborhood here. If my neighborhood wanted to have its own small modular reactor, they would find a place to put it. They would beef up the grid that goes to these houses, whatever is here with the houses, and they will do whatever's necessary for the level of security and assured power delivery that the neighborhood wants. So then we would be self-sufficient. So what would happen? Then the grid would be cut off to this neighborhood, so to speak, at that point. So power here is mostly delivered underground, opposed to where I lived in California, where everything is on a pole. So whatever, they would likely just shut things down, maybe use the copper for something else, don't know. But it would basically be the same thing as telephones, you know, like we all used to have our phones. And the cell phone shows up. So yeah, they stopped stringing copper and whatever happened to that copper once wasn't needed anymore. Very novel thing I saw at Washington National Airport, where the payphones used to be. This really cracked me up. They just have these little power outlets there, so you can plug your cell phone in where the payphones used to be. So there's but still the separation booths are still there. It's kind of cute. It's a statement of then and now. So yeah, I think it's largely abandoned in place or creatively transitioned to whatever you're going to do.
Perfect. Thank you, Marty. We have time for one more question. I'll read it. And then I hope if you wouldn't mind sharing your email address if you'd like people to contact you offline. Here's the next question. What kind of security detail is required for a small modular reactor?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay.
They're going to be built to standards like anything. It's like if they're not safe, they're not secure. You can even bury these things. Think of them as like, you know, in the old days, you'd have your car battery and you would have to check the water levels in it so it generates the right amount of acid. It's like, but now we have sealed batteries. Like cell phones now, you can't even get to your battery. It's like, it's a throwaway item. So it's same thing with this. This would be a plug it in, bury it, or put it behind a fence, or whatever you're going to do for your plan for securing it. Military, they're going to have their own plan for securing them when they're deployed. But they're very flexible, and depending on their size, they could fit in, one could fit in this room and probably deliver about 0.5 megawatt power for 25 years. So just depends what's needed for the mission. Give you an idea, Creech Air Force Base had a peak load on its hottest day, all the air conditioners on, it was just over 7 megawatts. So everybody working on this relatively large base, eating lunch and whatever, and piloting drones, the hottest day, all the air conditioner going was like 7 megawatts. So to say I could put a half megawatt reactor in this room, you can get a feel for the power density of these things. So of course, the smaller it is, the easier it is to secure it, but you could dig a large hole and bury a larger one too. So just depends on what the customer, the user would define. It's all in definition of what's needed. So.
Perfect. Okay, Marty, thank you so much for your presentation. And as everyone can view, your email is displayed if anyone has further questions to get in touch with you. And thanks again.
Great.
At this point, we're going to move into introducing our next guests. There'll be 2 guests combined, and they'll present